My name is Ethan Voss, 38 years old. For 3 years, I genuinely believed my marriage was simply going through a rough patch. 16 years together, and I was still trying to fix something that was never meant to survive. Then one Tuesday night at Murphy's bar, my wife Rachel looked me dead in the eyes in front of everyone and said she'd never marry me again. That single sentence detonated everything. What did I find in the wreckage? Secret recordings of my own phone calls. A private investigator's photos dated 2 months back. A divorce lawyer already on retainer, hers, not mine. Within 72 hours, everything collapsed. And Rachel? She was upstairs that same morning, calmly applying lipstick in the hallway mirror, completely unaware that the envelope sitting in my briefcase was about to end her carefully constructed game forever. Before I tell you what happened next, if you enjoy stories about justice and family boundaries, take a second to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely connect with this story. Where are you watching from right now? And what time is it there? Drop a comment and let me know. The envelope hit the table with a satisfying thud that cut through the laughter like a knife through butter. Game night at Murphy's bar had been going strong for 2 hours, and my wife Rachel was in peak form, performing for her audience of enablers and backstabbers. Absolutely not. Never again. Who'd marry this loser twice? She said, gesturing at me with her wine glass while her friends Bree and Sienna cackled like hyenas. Tyler Brandt, her gym owner boyfriend, who thought I didn't know about their little arrangement, slapped his knee and nearly choked on his beer. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I slid the manila envelope across the sticky wooden table, watching their faces change as the reality of what they were seeing sank in. Finally, something we agree on, Rachel. The laughter ended faster than a bad joke at a funeral. My name is Ethan Voss, and 3 months ago, I was just another middle-aged IT project manager trying to hold together a marriage that had been falling apart since our son Lucas turned 13. I'm 38, moderately successful, and according to my wife's increasingly public commentary, a complete disappointment as a human being. They say sarcasm is the last refuge of the desperate. I'm practically a sarcasm billionaire these days. Rachel and I had been married for 16 years, and for the last 3, she'd been systematically dismantling my self-respect in front of anyone who'd listened. It started small. Eye rolls when I told a story at dinner parties. Little comments about my lack of ambition when her friends came over. But like a cancer, it metastasized into something uglier. The morning of game night, I'd been fixing Lucas's computer when I overheard Rachel on the phone with her mother, Mrs. Wilson, who'd never liked me from day one. I know, Mom. I know. But what am I supposed to do? Lucas needs stability, and Ethan's got a good job. I can't just throw away 16 years because he's well, you know how he is. I knew how I was apparently. Boring, unambitious, a safe choice she'd settled for and now regretted. Lucas, my 14-year-old son, looked up from his gaming setup. Dad, you okay? Just peachy, kiddo. Your mom's giving Grandma Wilson the highlight reel of my inadequacies. He frowned. Lucas was quiet, observant, and had inherited my dry sense of humor along with Rachel's sharp intelligence. She does that a lot lately. Yeah, she does. That evening, Rachel announced we were going to game night at Murphy's bar. It was a monthly tradition with her circle, Bree Martinez, a gossip columnist for the local paper who treated other people's misery like personal entertainment. Sienna Walsh, a real estate agent who laughed at everything and enabled Rachel's worst impulses. Greg Thompson, Tyler's gym buddy, who actually seemed decent but lacked the backbone to call out bad behavior. And Tyler himself, Tyler Brandt, was everything I wasn't. 6 feet 2 inches, muscular, drove a red Mustang, and owned the most popular gym in town. He was also sleeping with my wife, though he didn't know I knew that yet. Come on, Ethan, Rachel said, applying lipstick in the hallway mirror. Try to be fun tonight. Maybe tell some of those little jokes you think are so clever. I'll do my best to entertain the masses. She gave me that look, the one that said I was already disappointing her, and the night hadn't even started. Murphy's bar was crowded, filled with the usual mix of 20-somethings pretending to be sophisticated and middle-aged locals trying to recapture their youth. Our group had claimed a large corner table and the drinks were flowing freely. The game was some relationship quiz thing Sienna had found online. Questions like, what's your partner's biggest fear, and, if you could change one thing about your relationship, what would it be? I'd been answering honestly, trying to play along, even making jokes that got genuine laughs from Greg and a few other people. But Rachel was in one of her moods, the kind where she needed to prove her superiority by cutting me down. Ethan thinks he's so funny, she said during a lull in conversation. Always with the little comments. It's like being married to a discount stand-up comedian. Tyler grinned. Hey, at least he's trying, right? Is he though? Rachel's voice had that edge it got when she'd had too much wine. I mean, really trying. Because from where I sit, it looks like he's given up on everything else. Bree leaned forward, sensing blood in the water. What do you mean? Oh, you know, same job for 8 years, same routine, same everything. No ambition, no drive. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd made different choices. The table got quiet. This was beyond the usual teasing. This was character assassination with an audience. Different choices like what? I asked, keeping my voice level. Rachel looked directly at me and I saw something cold and final in her eyes. Like not settling for safe, like not convincing myself that comfortable was the same thing as happy. That's when Sienna asked the question that changed everything. So, if you had to do it all over again, would you marry Ethan? Rachel didn't hesitate. Absolutely not. Never again. Who'd marry this loser twice? The laughter that followed felt like being flayed alive in public, but I'd been expecting this moment for months, preparing for it. The envelope I placed on the table contained divorce papers I'd had drawn up 3 weeks earlier after I'd finally accepted that my marriage was already over. I was just the last one to get the memo. Finally, something we agree on, Rachel. The silence that followed was beautiful. Rachel stared at the envelope like it might bite her. What is this? Divorce papers. Thought I'd save us both some time. Her face went through several expressions. Shock, anger, embarrassment, then back to anger. You can't be serious. Very serious. You just told a table full of people you wouldn't marry me again. I'm simply making sure you don't have to. Tyler cleared his throat. Maybe we should give you guys some privacy. No, I said, standing up and putting on my jacket. Stay. Enjoy your drinks. Rachel, you can have your lawyer look those over. I think you'll find the terms fair. I dropped a 20 on the table for my beer and walked out, leaving behind 16 years of marriage and whatever dignity I had left. The next morning, Rachel was waiting for me in the kitchen when I came down for coffee. She'd been crying, her makeup was smeared, and her hair was a mess. Ethan, we need to talk. I think we said everything we needed to say last night. I was drunk. I didn't mean it. I poured my coffee and looked at her. Really looked at her. Rachel was still beautiful at 36 with the kind of sharp features and confident bearing that turned heads, but I could see the calculation in her eyes. The way she was already working through her next move. Which part didn't you mean? The part where you called me a loser or the part where you said you'd never marry me again? All of it. I was just I don't know. Showing off, being stupid. No, you were being honest. Maybe for the first time in years. She tried a different approach. What about Lucas? You're going to destroy his family over one stupid comment. That stung because Lucas was the one thing we'd done right. But I'd thought about this, too. Lucas deserves to see what a healthy relationship looks like. Right now, he's watching his mother tear down his father for sport. What do you think that's teaching him about love? Rachel's face hardened. So, this is it. You're just giving up. I'm not giving up. I'm accepting reality. You checked out of this marriage a long time ago. I'm just making it official. That afternoon, I moved into my friend Marcus Chen's spare bedroom. Marcus was a software engineer I'd known since college, divorced himself, and blessed with the kind of dry wit that made even the worst situations bearable. So, she actually said that in front of everyone? He asked, helping me carry boxes up to his apartment. Word for word. Damn, that's cold, even for Rachel. Marcus had never liked my wife, though he'd been diplomatic about it over the years. Now that the gloves were off, he was more direct. You know she's been talking to people, right? About you? I sat down a box of books. What do you mean? Tina Rodriguez at your office mentioned something. Rachel's been calling around trying to control the narrative, making it sound like you just snapped out of nowhere. Tina was our HR coordinator and had never been fooled by Rachel's act. She tried to warn me months ago that Rachel had been asking questions about my job security and our insurance policies. What's she saying? That you've been distant, possibly depressed, maybe having some kind of midlife crisis. She's painting herself as the long-suffering wife who tried everything to save the marriage. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Of course, she is. That evening, Lucas called. Dad, Mom says you moved out. Yeah, buddy. We're getting divorced. There was a long pause because of what she said at the bar. You heard about that? Evan's mom was there. She told his dad and Evan told me. Evan was Lucas's best friend. And apparently the gossip mill was already grinding at full speed. It's not just about that, Lucas. Your mom and I, we haven't been happy for a long time. Sometimes people grow apart. She's been crying all day. But she's also been on the phone with Uncle Tyler a lot. Uncle Tyler? That's what Rachel had Lucas call her boyfriend. The kid wasn't stupid. He knew something was going on. How do you feel about all this? Another pause. Honestly, I'm kind of relieved. The fighting was getting weird. We weren't fighting. No, but she was all the time at you. It was like watching someone kick a dog out of the mouths of babes. 2 days later, I was at work when Tina knocked on my office door. You need to see this, she said, holding up her phone. It was a Facebook post from Rachel. A long emotional screed about how she was heartbroken that her husband had abandoned their family without warning. The comments were already pouring in. Friends and acquaintances offering support, asking what they could do to help. She's really going all out, Tina observed. Yeah, she is. You going to respond? I thought about it. The old Ethan would have tried to set the record straight. Would have engaged in a public back and forth that would only make things worse. But I was learning to think strategically now. No, let her have her moment. Truth has a way of coming out. That afternoon, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Mr. Voss, this is Lyle Patterson. I'm a private investigator. I think we should meet. Lyle Patterson looked exactly like what Central Casting would order for a private investigator. Rumpled coat, 3-day stubble, and the kind of world-weary expression that suggested he'd seen every variation of human stupidity. We met at a diner on the outskirts of town away from prying eyes. I'll cut to the chase, he said, stirring sugar into coffee that looked strong enough to strip paint. I've been watching your wife and Tyler Brandt for 3 weeks. Watching them? Someone hired me to document their relationship. Paid in cash. Didn't leave a name, but based on what I've seen, I'm guessing it was someone who wanted you to know what was going on. He slid a manila envelope across the table. Inside were photographs. Rachel and Tyler at restaurants, going into hotels, kissing in his Mustang. The timestamps went back 2 months. Who hired you? Lyle shrugged. Could have been anyone. Neighbor who felt bad for you. Friend who thought you deserved to know. Hell, could have been your kid. He's smart enough and has access to your wife's schedule. I thought about Lucas, about his quiet observations and increasing distance from his mother. It was possible. What do you want from me? Nothing. Job's already paid for, but I like you, boss. You seem like a decent guy getting a raw deal, so I'm going to make you an offer. He leaned forward. I've been doing this for 20 years. Seen a lot of divorces, a lot of people getting screwed over by cheating spouses. Most of the time, the good guy finishes last because they play by rules the other side threw out the window. And then I think it's time you stopped playing defense and started playing offense. Over the next hour, Lyle laid out everything he'd discovered. Tyler's gym was struggling financially. He'd taken out loans against equipment and was behind on rent. He had a reputation for sleeping with married clients, and at least 2 other women had left their husbands for him in the past 3 years. Both relationships had ended badly. More interesting was what he'd found about Rachel. She'd been talking to divorce lawyers for months, trying to figure out how to maximize her settlement. She'd also been documenting everything I did, building a case that I was an unfit father. She's been recording your phone calls. Lyle said, got a voice-activated app on her phone. Every conversation you've had with her in the past 2 months is saved. That's illegal in this state. Yeah, one-party consent doesn't apply when you're secretly recording someone else's calls, but she doesn't know that. He pulled out another folder. Here's what I'm thinking. Your wife wants to play dirty. Let's show her what dirty really looks like. The plan Lyle outlined was elegant in its simplicity. Instead of reacting to Rachel's moves, we'd anticipate them. Instead of defending myself against her accusations, I'd let her actions speak for themselves. First thing, we document everything. Every lie she tells, every manipulation, every time she uses your son as a weapon. Build a timeline that shows the real Rachel, not the victim she's pretending to be. And then we give her enough rope to hang herself with. That evening, I called Lucas. Hey buddy, how are things at home? Weird. Mom keeps asking me questions about you, like what time you come home from work, whether you drink too much, if you ever yell at me. What do you tell her? The truth. That you're boring and predictable and never yell at anyone. I laughed. Thanks for the ringing endorsement. Dad, are you going to be okay? Mom's been saying some pretty harsh stuff about you to her friends. What kind of stuff? That you're having a breakdown. That you might be dangerous. Aunt Bree thinks you should have to take some kind of test before you're allowed to see me. Aunt Bree, Rachel's gossip columnist friend who'd never met a rumor she wouldn't spread. Lucas, I want you to know something. No matter what your mother says, no matter what anyone says, I love you. And I'm not going anywhere. I know, Dad. I love you, too. After I hung up, I sat in Marcus' spare bedroom and thought about what I was becoming. 3 months ago, I'd been a guy who avoided conflict, who tried to see the best in people, who believed that being reasonable and fair would eventually win out. That guy was gone. The next morning, I implemented the first part of Lee's plan. I started documenting everything. Every conversation with Rachel, every interaction with Lucas, every piece of gossip that made its way back to me. I bought a small digital recorder and started carrying it everywhere. I also started going to Tyler's gym. Ethan, Tyler called out when he saw me walk in. Hey, man. How are you holding up? He was all fake concern and barely concealed smugness. The guy who was sleeping with my wife, pretending to care about my well-being. Oh, you know, taking it one day at a time. That's rough, brother. Divorce is never easy. But hey, maybe it's for the best, right? Sometimes people just grow apart. Sometimes they do. I signed up for a 6-month membership and started working out there 3 times a week. Not because I enjoyed it, but because I wanted to observe Tyler in his natural habitat to understand what Rachel saw in him. What I saw was a man who was all surface charm and no substance. He flirted with every attractive woman who walked through the door, made inappropriate comments about their bodies, and treated his employees like servants. He was also dealing steroids out of his office. Not hard to figure out when you watch the patterns of who went back there and how they behaved afterward. More importantly, I learned that Tyler talked a lot, especially about his conquests. "Man, these married chicks are the best," I heard him tell Greg one afternoon. "They're so grateful for the attention, you know, and they don't want anything complicated." "What about Rachel?" Greg asked. "She seems pretty into you." Tyler laughed. "Rachel's different. She's got this whole plan worked out. Divorce the husband, take half his stuff, then we ride off into the sunset together." "You serious about her?" "I'm serious about not working in this gym forever. Rachel's smart and she's got connections. Could be a good partnership." I was recording all of this. Of course, that weekend, Rachel made her first major mistake. She took Lucas to a family barbecue at her sister's house and spent the entire time trash-talking me to anyone who would listen. Lucas called me afterward. "Dad, you need to know what Mom said about you today." "What's that?" "She told everyone you've been acting strange, that she's worried about my safety. She said you might be having some kind of mental breakdown and that she's thinking about getting a restraining order." "A restraining order?" "That would effectively end any chance I had of getting joint custody." "Did anyone believe her?" "Some people did, but Cousin Jenny asked me if you'd ever been mean to me or Mom, and I told her no. She said Mom's story didn't make sense." "What else?" "She also said you've been stalking her, following her around, showing up places where she is." Which was interesting since I'd been going out of my way to avoid her. "Lucas, I need you to do something for me. Can you keep track of when your mom says these things? Write them down with dates and times." Already am Evan's idea. He said it might be important later. Smart kid. Both of them. The next week, Rachel escalated. She filed a complaint with my company's HR department, claiming I'd been harassing her at work. Since she worked for a marketing firm downtown and I worked for a tech company across town, this was obviously false, but it still required me to meet with my boss, and explain the situation. "Ethan, I've known you for 8 years, said Janet Morrison, my department head. "This doesn't sound like you at all." "It's not me. My wife is trying to build a case that I'm unstable." "Can you prove that?" I thought about the recordings, the timeline I'd been building, the evidence Lyle had gathered. "I'm working on it." That afternoon, Tina stopped by my office again. "Your wife called here today. Wanted to know about your work schedule, whether you'd been acting strange, if anyone had noticed changes in your behavior." "What did you tell her?" "That she should probably talk to you directly if she had questions about your schedule." Tina paused. "Ethan, I probably shouldn't tell you this, but she also asked about your access to company systems, whether you could hack into email accounts or social media profiles." "Why would she ask that?" "No idea, but it felt like she was trying to set up some kind of story." That evening, I met with Lyle again. He'd been busy. "Your wife's been making the rounds," he said. "Talking to lawyers, talking to your neighbors, talking to anyone who listen. She's building a narrative that you're obsessed with her. That you might be dangerous." "Based on what?" "Based on nothing. But she doesn't need facts, just enough people willing to repeat her story." He slid another folder across the table. "But here's the thing about lies. They're hard to keep straight. And your wife's been telling some pretty big ones." Inside the folder were transcripts of conversations Rachel had been having with her friends. Lyle had somehow gotten access to her phone records and social media accounts. "How did you don't ask questions you don't want answers to?" The transcripts were revealing. In them, Rachel laid out her strategy. Paint me as unstable. Get a restraining order. Use that to argue for sole custody. Then take me for everything I was worth in the divorce settlement. But more damaging were the conversations with Tyler. In those she was brutally honest about her feelings. I can't stand being in the same room as him anymore, she texted. Everything about him irritates me. The way he talks, the way he tries to be funny, even the way he breathes. So why not just leave? Tyler had responded. Because I need to do this right. If I just walk away, I get half of nothing. But if I can prove he's unfit, I get everything. There was more, much more, including detailed discussions about how to manipulate Lucas into taking her side and contingency plans if I fought back. She's underestimated you, Lyle observed. Thinks you're going to roll over and take it. I was 3 months ago. I probably would have. And now I thought about the public humiliation at Murphy's bar, about the lies she was spreading, about the way she was trying to turn my own son against me. Now I think it's time Rachel learned what happens when you poke a sleeping dog long enough. Lyle grinned. That's what I was hoping you'd say. The beauty of Rachel's plan was also its weakness. It required everyone to believe I was the villain. But Rachel had never been as good at reading people as she thought she was. My first move was simple. I started being visible. Instead of hiding out at Marcus' apartment, I went to Lucas's soccer games, attended parent-teacher conferences, showed up at community events. I was polite, normal, clearly not having any kind of breakdown. More importantly, I let Rachel's friends see the real me. Ethan, Sienna called out when she spotted me at the grocery store. How are you doing? Oh, adjusting to the new normal. She looked uncomfortable. Probably remembering her role in the Murphy's bar incident. Rachel says you're having a hard time with everything. I'm sure she does. She's worried about you. I gave her my best confused look. Worried about what? Well, she mentioned you've been following her around, showing up places, like where Sienna faltered. She said, Sienna, I've been staying at Marcus Chen's apartment for 3 weeks. I go to work. I go to the gym. I visit my son. When exactly am I supposed to be stalking my ex-wife? The doubt crept into her eyes. I don't know. That's what she said. Huh. Well, if you see me somewhere I shouldn't be, feel free to call the police. I left her standing there, clearly rethinking everything Rachel had told her. The second part of my plan involved Tyler's gym. I'd been documenting his steroid dealing, but more importantly, I'd been making friends with his other clients. Turns out a lot of people had Tyler stories, and most of them weren't flattering. Guy's a total sleaze, said Mike Harrison, a contractor who'd been working out there for 2 years. He's been through half the married women in this town. Really? Oh, yeah. There's a pattern. He targets women who are having marriage problems, gives them the full attention treatment, then moves on when things get complicated. Complicated how? Usually when the husband finds out or when the woman starts talking about leaving her husband for him. Tyler doesn't want anything permanent. He just likes the thrill of the chase. This was valuable information, especially since Rachel was clearly planning a permanent future with Tyler. I also learned that Tyler's business was in worse shape than Lyle had initially discovered. He owed money to some very unpleasant people and his landlord was threatening eviction. He's been asking the regulars for loans, Mike continued. Told me he had a big deal coming through, some kind of partnership that would solve all his problems. I had a pretty good idea what that partnership was. Meanwhile, Rachel was escalating her campaign. She'd convinced Bree to write a series of articles for the local paper about domestic abuse and the warning signs of dangerous behavior. While she never mentioned me by name, the details were specific enough that anyone who knew us would make the connection. Local therapist Dr. Sandra Martinez says that sudden personality changes can be a red flag. One article read, when a typically passive partner becomes confrontational or starts making dramatic life changes, it may indicate deeper psychological issues. It was cleverly done. Rachel was using the media to plant seeds of doubt about my mental state without actually accusing me of anything actionable. But she made a mistake. In her eagerness to control the narrative, she started contradicting herself. To some people, she claimed I was dangerously unstable. To others, she said I was pathetically clingy. To still others, she painted me as cold and calculating. The stories didn't match and people began to notice. More damaging was what happened when she tried to manipulate Lucas. "Mom wants me to tell the court that you scare me," Lucas told me during one of our visits. "Do I scare you?" "No, but she says if I don't say that, you might get custody and then she'd barely get to see me." "What did you tell her?" "That I'm not going to lie in court." Rachel hadn't counted on Lucas having his own moral compass. The breakthrough came when Lyle intercepted a conversation between Rachel and Tyler that revealed the full scope of their plan. "The restraining order hearing is next week," Rachel had said. "If we can get that, everything else falls into place." "What if the kid doesn't back up your story?" "He will. He has to. I'm his mother. And if he doesn't, then we go to Plan B. You remember what we discussed?" Plan B, it turned out, involved Tyler accidentally running into me somewhere and provoking a confrontation that could be used as evidence of my violent tendencies. "They're planning to set you up," Lyle explained. "Get you to take a swing at Tyler, then claim it proves you're dangerous. So, what do? We turn their plan against them." The setup came 2 days later. I was leaving Marcus' apartment building when Tyler appeared seemingly out of nowhere. "Ethan, we need to talk about what?" "About Rachel, about this whole situation." He was being loud, performing for an audience. I noticed a woman across the street who seemed to be recording with her phone, probably Bree, documenting my violent outburst. "Look, man. I know this is awkward," Tyler continued, stepping closer. "But Rachel and we didn't plan for this to happen." "I'm sure you didn't. She's been really upset about how you've been acting, following her around, making threats." "What threats?" "Come on, don't play dumb. She told me what you said about what you'd do if you caught us together." This was news to me since I'd never said anything remotely like that. But Tyler was building to something, getting more aggressive, clearly trying to provoke a reaction. "I think you should stay away from her," he said, putting his hand on my chest. "For everyone's sake." That's when I played my ace. "Funny you should mention staying away from people," I said, pulling out my phone and hitting play on a recording because I have some interesting audio of you talking about your relationship with Rachel. Tyler's voice filled the air. "Rachel's different. She's got this whole plan worked out. Divorce the husband, take half his stuff, then we ride off into the sunset together." Tyler's face went white. The woman across the street, definitely Bree, had stopped recording. "I've got hours of this stuff," I continued conversationally. "You talking about your steroid business, your other affairs, your financial problems. Really fascinating stuff. You can't record people without their permission." "Actually, I can. Single-party consent state. As long as one person in the conversation knows it's being recorded, it's perfectly legal." Tyler looked around desperately, realizing his ambush had become a trap. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, stepping closer to him. "You're going to stop harassing me. You're going to tell Rachel that her little plan B isn't going to work, and you're going to think very carefully about whether you really want to tie your future to someone who's willing to destroy her own family for money." I paused for effect because if this goes to court, all of this becomes evidence, and I don't think either of you wants that. Tyler backed away, his tough guy act completely deflated. "This isn't over," he muttered. "Yes, it is. You just don't know it yet." That evening, Rachel called me for the first time in weeks. "What did you say to Tyler?" "Just had a friendly conversation." "Why?" He's talking about ending things. Says the situation is getting too complicated. Huh. That's too bad. There was a long pause. Ethan, maybe we should talk about working things out. Working what out? Our marriage, our family. Maybe we moved too fast with this divorce thing. It was almost funny. The moment her plans started falling apart, she wanted to reconcile. I don't think so, Rachel. But Lucas needs his family together, and we were happy once. No, we weren't. You were just better at hiding your contempt back then. That's not true, Rachel. I have recordings of you telling Tyler how much you can't stand me. How everything about me irritates you. How you're only staying married for the money. Silence. So, let's skip the reconciliation speech and move straight to the part where we divide our assets and figure out custody. You bastard. And there was the real Rachel, the one her friends were finally starting to see. The restraining order hearing was scheduled for the following Monday, but over the weekend, something unexpected happened. Lucas called me excited. Dad, you need to see Mom's Facebook page. Rachel had posted a long emotional rant about how I was trying to destroy her reputation with lies and manipulated recordings. She accused me of harassment, stalking, and trying to turn her friends against her. But more damaging was what she'd revealed in her anger. She'd admitted to recording our conversations, mentioned details about our finances that she shouldn't have had access to, and made threats about what she'd do if I didn't back down. She's having a complete meltdown, Marcus observed, reading over my shoulder. This is not the post of someone who's been victimized. The comments were even more revealing. Instead of the sympathy Rachel was clearly expecting, her friends were asking uncomfortable questions. Why was she posting private details about her divorce? How did she have recordings if I was the one supposedly harassing her? And why did her story keep changing? Bree had tried to defend her, but even that backfired when she accidentally revealed that they'd been planning to catch Ethan in the act of threatening Tyler. Catch me doing what exactly? I commented on the post. I was walking out of my apartment building when Tyler approached me. Are you saying that was a setup? The post was deleted within an hour, but screenshots had already been taken and shared. By Sunday evening, Rachel's carefully constructed narrative was falling apart. Her friends were distancing themselves. Tyler was nowhere to be found, and even her mother was asking questions about the inconsistencies in her story. Monday morning, Rachel's lawyer called mine. My client would like to discuss a settlement. The settlement negotiations took place in a conference room that smelled like stale coffee and broken dreams. Rachel sat across from me with her lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia Hendress, who'd clearly realized her client had been less than truthful about the circumstances of our divorce. My client is prepared to agree to joint custody, Crix began, in exchange for Mr. Voss withdrawing any claims regarding the recordings and social media posts. My lawyer, David Kim, was a soft-spoken man with a reputation for being thoroughly prepared. I'm afraid that's not going to work. My client has evidence of systematic harassment, defamation, and attempted fraud. We're not interested in making this go away quietly. Rachel looked like she'd aged 5 years in the past week. Tyler had indeed ended their relationship, and word of his steroid dealing had spread through the gym community. He was facing his own legal troubles. Now, what do you want? Rachel asked directly. I want joint custody of Lucas. I want the house sold and the proceeds split fairly. And I want a public apology for the lies you've been spreading. A public apology. Facebook post. Same platform you used to defame me. You admit you lied. You apologize. And you promise to stop spreading false information about me. Rachel's face flushed. I'm not doing that. Then we go to trial and everything comes out. The recordings, the affair, the financial manipulation, the attempts to turn Lucas against me. All of it. Crix whispered something to Rachel, who shook her head violently. My client maintains that she was acting in good faith. Your client, David interrupted, was recorded discussing her plan to falsely accuse my client of mental instability in order to gain an advantage in custody proceedings. She coordinated with her boyfriend to provoke a confrontation that could be used as evidence against my client, and she's been systematically defaming him to friends, family, and his employer. He slid a thick folder across the table. This is just a sample of what we have. Phone records, social media posts, witness statements, audio recordings. If this goes to trial, your client won't just lose custody. She'll be facing criminal charges for fraud and harassment. The room went quiet except for the sound of Hicks flipping through the evidence. I need to consult with my client privately. They left the room. Through the glass walls, I could see Rachel gesturing angrily while her lawyer spoke in urgent low tones. Think she'll take the deal? David asked. She doesn't have a choice. When they returned, Rachel looked defeated. We accept the terms, Hendrik said. Joint custody, equal division of assets, and the apology. There's one more thing I said. I want it in writing that Rachel will not discuss our relationship or divorce with Lucas beyond what's necessary for his well-being. No attempts to turn him against me. No discussions about the settlement. No trying to make him choose sides. Agreed. We shook hands, and just like that, 16 years of marriage was reduced to a legal document. But Rachel wasn't done fighting. That evening, she called Lucas. I was at Marcus's apartment when my son called me upset. Dad, Mom's really angry. She says you forced her to lie in the Facebook post. What Facebook post? The one where she apologized to you. She says you blackmailed her into writing it. I pulled up Facebook on my phone. Rachel's apology was there, but it was the most passive-aggressive non-apology I'd ever seen. I want to apologize to my ex-husband for any misunderstandings that may have occurred during our divorce proceedings. While I maintain that my concerns were valid, I realize that some of my statements may have been taken out of context. I hope we can move forward in a way that's best for our son. It was technically what we'd agreed to, but it was clear she was still trying to save face. Lucas, your mom is angry because her plan didn't work out the way she hoped, but that doesn't mean she gets to drag you into it. She wants me to tell people that you made her write that apology. What do you want to do? There was a long pause. I want this to be over. I want to spend time with both my parents without feeling like I'm in the middle of a war. Then that's what we'll do. The next few weeks were relatively quiet. Rachel moved into a small apartment across town. I found my own place and Lucas split his time between us. The gossip mill gradually moved on to other scandals and life began to settle into a new normal. But Rachel had one last card to play. 2 months after our divorce was finalized, I got a call from Lucas's school. He'd been in a fight, something that had never happened before. What was it about? I asked the principal. Another student made some comments about his family situation. Lucas took it badly. When I picked him up, Lucas was quiet and angry. What happened? Jeremy Walsh said, you destroyed our family because you couldn't handle Mom finding someone better. Jeremy Walsh, Sienna's son. What did you say? I told him his mom was a drunk who laughed at other people's pain for entertainment. And then I punched him. I should have been upset about the violence, but honestly, I was a little proud. Did you get in trouble? Suspended for 3 days, but Jeremy got suspended too for starting it. That evening, Sienna called me. Ethan, we need to talk about what happened at school. What about it? Jeremy was just repeating what he'd heard. He didn't mean anything by it. What he heard from who? Silence. Sienna. If Rachel is still talking to people about our divorce, she's violating our agreement. She's not, she's just processing everything, trying to make sense of what happened. What happened is that she got caught lying and had to face the consequences. If she wants to process that, she can do it with a therapist, not with her friend's children. The call ended awkwardly, but I'd made my point. A few days later, Bree published another article in the local paper. This one about the dangers of social media in divorce proceedings and how false accusations can destroy lives. She never mentioned Rachel by name, but the timing was suspicious. I called David Kim. Is this a violation of our agreement? Technically, no, but it's close. What can we do about it? Document it. If there's a pattern of continued harassment, we can go back to court. But I had a better idea. That weekend, I ran into Greg Thompson at the grocery store. He looked uncomfortable when he saw me. Ethan, hey, Greg. We stood there awkwardly for a moment. Look, I wanted to apologize, he said finally. For that night at Murphy's, I should have said something. Why didn't you? I don't know. Cowardice, I guess. Nobody wants to be the guy who ruins the party. Even when the party involves humiliating someone. He nodded, especially then. But I've been thinking about it, and what Rachel did was wrong. What we all did was wrong. Yeah, it was. For what it's worth, Tyler's gone. Left town last week, his gym closed, and he owed money to some people who don't take IUS. This was news to me. Where'd he go? Nobody knows. Just disappeared one night, left his car behind and everything. I wondered if Rachel knew. Probably not, or I would have heard about it from Lucas. Anyway, Greg continued, I just wanted you to know that not everyone believed the stuff Rachel was saying. Some of us knew better. But you didn't say anything. No. And I'm sorry about that. It wasn't much, but it was something. That evening, I was helping Lucas with his homework when he asked me a question I'd been dreading. Dad, do you hate Mom? I thought carefully about my answer. No, I don't hate her. I'm disappointed in her and I'm angry about how she treated me, but hate is a strong word. She says you destroyed her life. What do you think? Lucas was quiet for a long moment. I think she destroyed her own life and she's mad that you didn't let her destroy yours, too. 14 years old and he'd figured out what it had taken me months to understand. Your mom made some bad choices, I said. But she's still your mom and she loves you. I know, but I'm glad you didn't just let her get away with it. Yeah, me too. 6 months later, Rachel moved to another state. She'd found a job with a marketing firm in Atlanta and decided she needed a fresh start. Lucas chose to stay with me and visit her during school breaks. At his going-away party, because despite everything, she was still his mother. Rachel pulled me aside. I know you probably don't want to hear this, she said. But I am sorry for all of it. Are you? Or are you just sorry it didn't work out the way you planned? She thought about that both, I guess. Rachel, you spent 3 years systematically destroying my self-respect. You cheated on me, lied about me, tried to turn my own son against me, and nearly destroyed my reputation. All because you were too cowardly to just ask for a divorce. I know. Do you? Because even now, you're painting yourself as the victim. Poor Rachel, forced to move away because her evil ex-husband wouldn't let her rewrite history. Her face hardened. What do you want me to say, Ethan? That I'm a terrible person. That I deserve everything that happened to me. I want you to understand that actions have consequences and that the next time you decide someone isn't worth your respect, you might want to make sure they're not capable of fighting back. She stared at me for a long moment. You're different. Yeah, I am. I like the old Ethan better. I'm sure you did. He was easier to walk on. Rachel left the next day. Lucas was sad, but not devastated. They'd grown apart over the months of conflict, and he was looking forward to starting fresh himself. A year later, I ran into Bree at a coffee shop. She looked embarrassed when she saw me. Ethan. Hi, Bree. I heard Lucas made honor roll. That's great. Yeah, he's doing well. She fidgeted with her coffee cup. I wanted to, should probably apologize. Yeah. For which part? The public humiliation, the hit pieces in the paper, or helping Rachel try to frame me as an abusive husband? All of it. I guess I studied her face. She looked genuinely remorseful. But then again, Rachel had looked remorseful, too, when her plans fell apart. Bree, you're a journalist. You're supposed to care about truth, but you were willing to destroy someone's reputation based on gossip and lies. I know. Rachel was my friend, and I wanted to support her by helping her lie. I didn't know she was lying. Not at first. When did you figure it out? When Tyler disappeared. Rachel told me he'd just gotten cold feet about their relationship. But then I found out about the money he owed and the steroid dealing, and it all fell apart. And you realized that if Rachel had lied about Tyler, she'd probably lied about me, too. Yeah. I finished my coffee and stood up. Bree, I appreciate the apology. But you need to understand something. What you did to me, you'll do to someone else. Because when it comes down to it, you care more about a good story than you do about the truth. That's not fair, isn't it? You're a gossip columnist who uses people's pain for entertainment. You enabled someone who was trying to destroy an innocent person's life. And the only reason you're apologizing now is because you got caught on the wrong side of the story. I left her sitting there, probably already composing her next article about the aftermath of divorce or some other topic that would let her profit from other people's misery. 2 years after the divorce, I was in a good place. Lucas was thriving. I'd been promoted at work, and I'd even started dating again. A teacher named Sarah who thought my sarcasm was charming rather than irritating. Then I got a call from an unknown number. Ethan, it's Tyler. I almost hung up, but curiosity got the better of me. What do you want? I wanted to apologize and to thank you. Thank me for what? For not destroying me completely. You could have pressed charges, could have made sure I went to prison, but you didn't. I didn't do it for you. I did it because I wanted to move on with my life, not spend years in courtrooms. Still, I appreciate it. There was a long pause. Tyler, why are you calling me? Because I wanted you to know that you were right about Rachel, about everything. She wasn't the person I thought she was. What happened? She found me in Atlanta, showed up at my new job, told my boss we were engaged, started planning this whole future together. When I told her I wasn't interested, let's just say she didn't take it well. What did she do? Same thing she did to you. Started spreading lies, trying to turn people against me, making my life hell until I had to leave town again. I wasn't surprised. Rachel had never learned to handle rejection. Where are you now? Colorado. Got a job at a ski resort trying to start over again. Good luck with that, Ethan. I know this doesn't mean much, but I want you to know that I never meant for things to go as far as they did. The plan to set you up, the lies about you being dangerous, that was all Rachel's idea, but you went along with it. Yeah, I did, and I'm sorry. After he hung up, I sat in my kitchen thinking about the conversation. Tyler wasn't a good person. He was weak, selfish, and had made terrible choices. But at least he'd eventually recognized what Rachel was. I wondered if she ever would. 3 years after our divorce, I got my answer. Lucas came back from a visit to Atlanta looking troubled. How's your mom? I asked. Not great. She got fired from her job. What happened? She was dating her boss, and when he broke up with her, she filed a harassment complaint, but it turned out she'd been recording their conversations and the recordings proved she was lying. The pattern continued. Rachel had never learned that you can't build a life on lies and manipulation. She wants to move back here. Lucas continued. Says she's learned from her mistakes and wants to be closer to me. What do you think about that? I think she hasn't learned anything. She spent the whole visit telling me how everyone in Atlanta was against her, how they didn't understand her side of the story. Same old Rachel. Yeah, same old Rachel. Lucas was 17 now, mature beyond his years with a clear understanding of who his mother was and what she was capable of. He loved her, but he wasn't blind to her faults. "Dad, I'm glad you fought back. I'm glad you didn't just let her destroy you." "Yeah, me too. Do you think she'll ever change?" I thought about that question. Rachel was now in her early 40s, had lost multiple jobs and relationships due to her behavior, and had alienated most of the people in her life. If she was going to change, she would have done it by now. "I don't know," I said finally. "But it's not our problem anymore." And it wasn't. Rachel was someone else's problem now. Someone else's cautionary tale about what happens when you mistake cruelty for strength and manipulation for intelligence. As for me, I was exactly where I wanted to be. I had my son's respect, a job I enjoyed, a woman who loved me for who I was rather than who she wanted me to be, and the quiet satisfaction that comes from standing up for yourself when it matters most. They say the best revenge is living well. But sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to be destroyed by people who mistake your kindness for weakness. Sometimes the best revenge is having the last word.